the deal makers. The deal maker segment, we have actually, it's a moderated panel discussion, and we have some amazing women sales leaders here with us. You'll be very, very interesting to know. You'll be very interested to know their personal stories, their personal journeys that they have, and how they're navigating it and showing up every single day and saying, this is where I am, this is where I want to go. So we have Sumita, who is going to be our moderator for the session. Sumita, in fact, is the discussion that we were having the other day. She says, actually, why am I not in sales? Why am I doing HR? But interestingly, she is the interim HR leader of LinkedIn's human resources organization, and is responsible for leading LinkedIn's HR business partners across APAC. She has over 25 years of HR experience in the technology, financial, and hospitality sectors, and has been with LinkedIn in India since 2014, where she joined as a senior HR business partner. She's been quickly promoted to director in 2018 and to take on the responsibility of the interim leader of the APAC region in 2022. Sumita, you've had an interesting career yourself, and we are going to be listening to some awesome stories over the next hour. So over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anjali. Am I audible? Awesome.
Yes.
Anjali, thanks for this very warm welcome. Good morning, everyone. So we have with us today some very special women who've taken out this time to invest in this conversation, share their experiences and knowledge with us. And we're going to, all of us, leave a little bit more wiser, hopefully, after this session. So with that, let me get into making some introductions. We have with us Kanchana Krishnan. Welcome, Kanchana, today, and thank you for your time for this really nice discussion that we're going to have. Kanchana has spent over 19 years in the commercial real estate industry. She's worked with diverse people like landlords and tenants and investors across the Indian real estate industry. She's managing director for Colliers. A fun fact about Kanchana, she actually studied human resources. She is academically qualified to be an HR professional, but her choice to be in sales is her calling. I found this very interesting when we were warming up with each other just yesterday. So Kanchana, welcome. We have with us also today Priyam Vada, who wants to be addressed as Priya. So we're going to call her Priya. Priya, welcome. Priya is country manager and vice president Vietnam at P&G. She has had an amazing journey, a stellar career with P&G India and in international locations. She started her journey as a key account manager. And as I shared with you, she's currently leading Vietnam, VP for Vietnam at P&G. And last but not least, we have Dipali Nair. Dipali and I connected at a very special level yesterday. We had common connects that we were talking about when we were warming up yesterday. Dipali, welcome. Dipali is the digital sales leader. She's the CEO of digital sales at IBM. She's leading India, ASEAN, Australia, and Korea at IBM. Dipali is 3 times listed in 50 most influential women in India and winner of ET CMO of the Year in 2020. Ladies, let's do this. So in LinkedIn, we typically also include in the introductions, when we introduce people, we ask them to demonstrate a special skill or talent and share with us one thing that's not on their LinkedIn profile. But don't worry, I know some of you missed a beat there, heartbeat there. I'm not going to ask you to demonstrate a skill or talent today. We'll leave that for another day. I will go around the room and would love to warm us up and lift the energy with hearing from each one of you. What is not on your LinkedIn profile? Dipali, let me start with you. The one thing.
What's not on my LinkedIn profile, Sumita, is that I have a huge antique silver jewelry collection, and I am wearing these very large earrings. So there is a demo.
Beautiful. I love it. Kanchana, you're next.
What is not on my LinkedIn profile is I've always had the burning desire to become a radio jockey, do a lot of dubbing.
Wow.
which is not there in my LinkedIn profile. That's still a desire for me.
Have you had any opportunity to actually do it?
I have actually not explored avenues, but somehow that people connect really interests me a lot. That's not on my profile.
Sumita, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to. Kanchana, I turned podcaster, 2.5 years ago. You should try your hand at it. It's
Excellent.
really easy and we can connect.
Yeah.
Another thing we say in LinkedIn is we dream big, we have fun, and we get work done. So dream on, Kanchana. I know it will happen. I look forward
Absolutely.
to hearing you as RJ at some point. What's not on your LinkedIn profile?
So what's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I had aspirations of becoming a professional baker, but life
Wow.
took me on a completely different angle. I never trained for it. I just dreamed about it as a young girl. I still dabble in it on weekends, and being in sales, and most of you would understand this, that month ends and quarter ends have a special place in our lives. So when my stress levels go particularly high, the higher they go, the more I bake to get to de-stress.
Priya, I'm going to throw you a challenge. I actually don't have a sweet tooth, but if something is baked for me which contains whiskey in it, go for it. So someday, as you've
Someday, for sure.
deliver the baking goods to me full of whiskey, I'm up for it. So, okay, ladies, let's do this. I'll move right into the first question, which is something which is on our minds. I was listening to the earlier keynote speakers, and when I entered the conversation, I was thinking, the jury may still be out on women are good at sales or not. But I think the verdict is out. At least I'm declaring that women are good at sales. Okay. Why then do we end up selling ourselves short? So we are good at sales when it comes to taking on larger quotas, bigger territories, more targets, heavier targets, intensity. But then when it comes to selling ourselves, when it comes to making those career moves and selling ourselves, why do we sell ourselves short? Do you agree, or do you disagree with that? Can I go to Kanchana for this first?
Yes, Sumita, I think I agree, because I call it self-sabotage. So I fundamentally, I'm not too sure if I can say this. It's probably an innate quality of a woman. I mean, we try to self-doubt and underestimate ourselves than it actually is, which is not the case. There is an interesting verse that I read. Men actually project themselves better than what they actually are, and women actually project themselves as worse than it actually is. I think it's more about self-doubting yourself and underestimating yourself. And I like this quote of Sheryl Sandberg. She says, sit at the table. That's extremely important. Do not step back, or do not self-doubt. That's a very important aspect I want to leave as a takeaway for all women leaders, not only women leaders, all aspiring women who are in the corporate field or who are in any field. I think self-doubting is something that we should, try and get rid of. Be bold, be confident, and it's important to sit at the table. I think early on in your career, when you start doing that early on in your career, I think it helps you much better when you reach, when you practically climb the vertical ladder. That is still there, but as a part, in fact, the company that I work for, we do a lot of training sessions, learning and development sessions on how to be more self-confident and sit at the table. That's very important, Sumita. Sitting at the table and, showing up is an important criteria to be successful, especially if you want to be in sales.
Thanks, Kanchana. I'm going to take this to the next level, because what I say to my key stakeholder, who's the Vice President of Sales and Managing Director of LinkedIn in Asia Pacific, I tell her as her HR business partner, I am the table. I'm not just sitting at your table. I am the table. So let's all not just sit at the table, but we are the table and we're at the center of it. So, Priya, what's your take on this? Why do we end up selling ourselves short?
I think it's a couple of factors. I think the primary one is the fact that we need more role models. When you're aspiring to grow in your career, you want to know that someone like you can succeed. And that just culturally we hear so much negative words sometimes in terms of especially when you have a sales career, that how difficult is it, and the higher you go the tougher it gets. And like some of the earlier speakers also mentioned about 25 days of travel and this etc., that you start to kind of self-doubt because of the noise around you. But there's a very easy fix for it. The moment you start to get role models is when that noise is cut off very well. And that's what I mean, I've benefited from it. I didn't have too many, but I had one one woman leader who I really admired, and then every time I saw her progress, it gave me a little bit more confidence, saying that if she can do it, I can too. So I think that's one aspect. I think the second aspect is also a bit cultural. Humility is something that is so ingrained, I think, a little bit as Indians in general, but more for women. Talking about yourself, talking about your accomplishments, talking about things that you've done is never really given a positive connotation. So it's a little bit of a cultural aspect, and I think that some of the an organization can benefit tremendously when you start to reverse this thinking and talk about speaking for yourself and sitting at the table as something which is a good thing, and not necessarily you're being pompous or you're beating your own drum, etc. So I guess two of these factors probably.
True. I think it's important to do what is making you uncomfortable. And as you rightly said, Priya, sometimes beating about ourselves, beating our own drum is uncomfortable, but you're doing a disservice to yourself more than anyone else, and to the entire community that is going to look up to you later by not doing so. Thanks for sharing that, Priya. Dipali, over to you.
So, Sumita, I really want to make 3 points here. One is I agree, with Kanchana and Priya about the fact that I think women don't drumbeat their own achievements and probably tend to, short sell themselves. The second point that Priya made about, not enough role models, in fact, has been attested by a very large study that IBM did across the world on diversity and inclusion, which is that there are always, in every age group, in every society, in every culture, you need enough role models for women then, to aspire for, what they can do. And the same study also mentioned that a lot of policy changes have happened over the last decades. And there's been some progress, but not to the liking, and therefore we are discussing this today. And what's missing is male allyship or male sponsorship. And that's a very extremely important part of this whole equation. And let me explain. I think it's not just about women in sales. It's about women CEOs also. They do a stellar job. I mean, you will have enough examples of, women in leadership positions doing a great role as CEOs. But we all know that's an abysmal small percentage of, women CEOs. And, you bring it back to the male allyship. Sometimes I feel that this question should not be asked of us. This question should be asked of people who are recruiting for these positions. And therefore, I wish, Sumita, that we could have a panel discussion of, chairmen of several boards and ask them, that why aren't there enough women CEOs when, they are capable? So I think it's a combination, therefore. Yes, women sell themselves short. Yes, they may not be enough in the pipeline, in terms of numbers. But I also think that going back to Sheryl Sandberg's book, and she's articulated lots of biases that may exist in people's minds, people who are doing the recruitment and putting women or men in positions of importance. And I think the debate needs to go there too.
Absolutely. I think there's so many rich nuggets coming from each one of you. And it's great to refer to the books we've read and the quotes. It's all very helpful, but nothing beats listening to all of you live right now. This is absolutely pure gold. When you spoke about male allyship, I'm going to leave Anjali with a task. Anjali, I think the next panel for you is going to be where you need to bring in the men. bring in our allies. And I was reflecting over what you said, Dipali. I have 2 sons and I have 1 husband. So I'm the only female in my house. And many times I've told them, why I work and why I get so much of joy at work, because I feel more empowered there than I feel in my own house. And you boys, I feel sorry for your partners. And they're going to come and curse me later for not having brought you up the right way. So they get a whip from me every now and then on what it means to, respect women and grow them and be a male ally. That's on the lighter side. Okay. I would love for you to share with all of us listening virtually, watching virtually today, what was a game-changing moment in your life, in your sales career? A moment or a person or a situation? I heard some of you speak about role model that you had. So it could be a situation or a moment which made you just sit back in disbelief and say, I need to take my sales career more seriously. All of us have these moments or situations or people who make us change the game in how we look at our careers. So I'd love to hear from you, your personal examples. Priya, can I start with you this time?
For me, I think this happened a year after my daughter was about a year old. So this is like 6 months into coming back from maternity. And for those of us who have gone through that experience, it's not easy. And the first child coming back from maternity, I was in tears more number of days than I was not when I was leaving home for work. And it was at around that time that I realized that in 6 months, things kind of settled down a bit more. She was about a year old, and suddenly it didn't seem that traumatic, and things were a bit okay. And I remember that one time, which was after a period of these crying goodbyes that mother and daughter used to go through. One fine day, she didn't. For whatever reason, she didn't, and she just waved and she was smiling and she just said, "Bye, Mama." And then I just went back to work, obviously a lot happier. But then I realized that, man, I have a lot of responsibility on my shoulder. I've gone 6 months of painful separation, anxiety driven for both mother and daughter. And now I need to make sure that I make this count. I can't just get into a career and float around. It is something that I need to make a little bit more of than what I had, at least at that point in time, imagined. And I got a lot more intentional about what I wanted to do with my career from then onwards. And it kind of got reinforced with when my son was born as well. Similar experiences, etc. But I was a little wiser. And I realized that when I'm, leaving home and I'm not spending as many hours with my child as I would want to, I need to make it count. It cannot be just something which is done as a hobby. It has to be something that, when they look up at, and they're grown up, which they are now, and they look at me and they feel proud of what their mother has achieved. So I guess that was the moment for me.
Thank you for sharing. I had goosebumps. I could visualize you, finding it so hard to leave your child and go back to work. Dipali, would love to hear from you next.
Yeah, Sumita, it's a slight bit of a context. So I grew up in very small towns and town. I come from a very conservative Marwadi family. And although I was a school topper, throughout, I was not expected to have a serious career by anyone. So there were very low expectations. Okay. Boys who were scoring much lower than me, there were serious conversations that used to happen at their homes. My parents were very encouraging. My mother very committed to my career, but the societal expectations were very low. And your teachers, your friends, the conversations with your friends and uncles and aunts have an impact despite your parents pushing you. My mother always wanted me to be an IAS officer, by the way. So while on one side I had that voice and aspiration, on the other side, it was a case of low expectations. Anyway, I did well, I ended up doing my MBA, and, I had a career, and that itself was a big thing in those days in the, community and set of people that I grew up in. So frankly, I actually did not take my career itself seriously. I think for the first 10 years of my life, I took a lot of risks which paid off later on, but I think that's serendipity. The point where I took my career seriously was when, 10 years into my job, there is a financial commitment that I took on, of actually buying a very large home, beyond our capability. And of course, by that time, my son was in our life, and there was seriousness to the family life. I think that was the moment I remember when I took my break, with my son, and first time did not have an income and a monthly salary coming into my account made me realize that, I better have a very, very good financial freedom, financial career. I think it was the more that motivated me. And I think it's not just about the sales career, any career. So I'm an all-in kind of a person. So whether I'm doing customer service or I'm doing sales or I'm doing marketing, and I've done all these, three different roles, I'm just very, very all in. So I think this whole context of becoming serious about my personal life and wanting financial freedom and financial stability is actually what made me take my career extremely seriously. And that happened at a 10-year mark, in my career.
Interesting. Like I told Anjali, I wanted to be a panelist myself, but I have to stop talking. Kanchana, over to you.
My story is slightly different. In fact, I started my career early 2000 when it was called IT boom era. And I am a master's in human resource, MBA specializing in human resource. 6 months into a HR talent acquisition job, I knew I didn't like it. And I switched over to a career in real estate without even understanding it was real estate. I needed a job and I entered into real estate. And the one thing that was interesting was I knew it was a big networking business. In fact, the person who hired me, who's a mentor now, did tell me that this is a business that today there are not many women. And on hindsight, when I look back, whatever he said was true. But at that time, there were no women at all in this hard, brick and mortar business. And whenever I speak to clients or investors, I was always intrigued. They'll give me a meeting, but the first thing that they would ask me is, how come you got into this industry? I mean, there are not many women, so many kind of things. Being a early 20-year-old, I think then I really took it into a big challenge. And I said, I will have to do it and I will have to make a mark in this industry. And luckily, fortunately, I must say, I liked it. The adrenaline rush that a business win gives me, the networking that I am able to do every day gave me that adrenaline rush. And I think I was a little fortunate enough, I must say, to get into this industry. And well, I'm here 20 years. I think despite all ups, downs, it still gives me that rush whenever I wake up and whenever I want. I feel like coming back every Monday morning. And I think that's what everybody should look forward to.
Thank you so much. I think all of you are going to achieve a lot today without you even realizing, because everyone who's listening is going to definitely feel so inspired. I want to be respectful of time. I'm going to ask the next question, but I won't go around the room. I will look for volunteers, whoever wants to speak. So we heard from some of the keynote speakers also that some biases and limiting beliefs exist on our own minds. We have our own biases. And then some of us have also faced gender bias in the workplace. But when you think of gender and your sales career, have any of you ever made your gender your strength to open doors, to get a meeting with decision makers when it comes to closing a deal? Why have we never thought about the fact that our genders actually could be leveraged as one of our biggest strengths? So any of you want to share, if you are comfortable, if you have leveraged being a woman to be successful in a sales career?
Sumita, let me go first. I think it's not about us leveraging, it's circumstantial and it happens. I was the I was one of the first 2 female management trainees that Tata Motors hired, okay, 30 years ago. So I was unique. I was alone, right? In my sales stint, which you all do as management trainees in your first job, when I would go to, the truck owners, they had never seen a female ever coming from Tata Motors to meet with them. And, Tata Motors then was telco and it was a truck company, right? So I think the exception that used to happen, not because I used it, the exception that happened was that I always used to get offered, Madam, baithiye chair pe, Madam, aap ye chai ka cup pijiye, that would happen. The second, we would visit the dealerships, right? The boys who were management trainees along with me, they were the junior most rung, and Tata Motors dealers were these rich millionaires or billionaires, okay? They would again, not even get offered a cup of tea at the dealership. And I would get invited to their homes because I was a woman who was traveling and they'd love for me to meet with their wives and daughters. So it was not a thing of my own making, but it happened because, you were unique at that point of time. And I think the courtesy, that existed in those days, made it happen. I don't think the young management trainees today, the women who are entering the workforce experience, what I experienced. But after that, I think after you hit a 5 or 6 year career mark, I've never used gender to open a door, and I don't think it happens also very easily, according to me. However, I think the skill sets that you have, I think that you can use, and being a woman first in some of the places is a conversation. So when I started my podcast, 3 years ago, I am the first female podcaster in the mainstream business leadership line in India, right? And I use that line. We use that line everywhere when we are inviting CEOs. I've done, 36 CEO interviews. We use that line everywhere saying that, Deepali is the first female podcaster. So I think my answers is not just the gender bit. It's also about, being unique and being first.
Fair enough. Makes a lot of sense. Anyone else who wants to quickly share their perspective on this? Otherwise, I'll move on to the next question.
I'll probably resonate with the Pali feeling is mutual because certain industries are hardcore, brick and mortar. The industry, Tata Motors. I think certain industries are unique and as Dipali said, such skill sets. For example, when you start a career, I was one of very few women in the industry, and the way you approach people is different. See, fundamentally, men and women are wired very differently. You're very empathetic when you speak to people. You're very compassionate when you ask for a meeting. So I think there are some unique skill sets which perhaps will get you in much more easier than the other. But I think the lot is to do with, standing strong, patient, perseverant, and being empathetic towards people. I think that's a big reason for whatever I am today. I think being empathetic towards the other side of the table will definitely get you there, Sumita.
Yeah, and I think I agree with both Dipali as well as Kanchana. Even in my case, I was in an FMCG sales career. I was meeting with wholesalers and distributors who had never seen a woman before in their life. So it was just easier, and I was offered the same courtesy as Dipali described. So obviously that made life a little easier. But I think where the uniqueness as a woman really helped me was when I started leading large teams. When you're leading a large team, there is that requirement of empathy, which is a lot more than, if you were an individual contributor. And most sales careers, especially as you grow, will require you to lead large teams with people from different backgrounds, different concerns, etc. And I think that's where our uniqueness as women and the empathy that we have kind of, works to our advantage, where you see a colleague who's, staying in late, and that he has kids at home or she has kids at home, and then you suddenly are so much more empathetic to the situation that, you're just better placed. So somebody comes in and says that, my child's not well and I need to leave early or late or come in late. It doesn't even sound as a request to you. You're almost telling them that, go, why are you here? Right? And it comes because you're almost immediately imagining your own situation and how many times you've been through it. So I think that's where I find that is the one place where I found and I felt that I had an advantage because of who I was. My gender was an advantage for sure.
Priya and Sumita, I want to add though, I think what I remember from, 20 years ago when I was at Marico was, going to Sadar Bazaar, Delhi, wearing a salwar kameez, because you had to wear a salwar kameez when you were visiting, but I also wore sports shoes, to be
Yes,
comfortable, so yeah, I think those are the things that you tend to remember, that you kind of adopt very different behavior.
absolutely.
Absolutely. I think this is fascinating for me. And I was just thinking, if there's anyone who's really biased, it's actually God. God is biased towards women and especially mothers. I don't know how we get the energy to balance our homes, our children. We make those trade-offs, and that's where the bias exists. And I'm happy to say that, God is biased towards me. I was also thinking of myself as a HR practitioner. It's not just about gender diversity for me. It's just to make you all laugh, and this is true. When I joined LinkedIn in Gurgaon, and I was 40 at the time. Why I'm sharing this is when all of you said that being a woman was unique, but you rose to the occasion because you realized that it's actually an advantage. It's your biggest strength. I realized that being a 40-year-old was unique. No one else in the LinkedIn had ever seen a 40-year-old before, other than their parents. I was unique in that sense. Tough journey ahead, but I used my age as my biggest strength because it was so unique. It was not seen ever before in the LinkedIn Gurgaon office. So what I want to do in the next few minutes is really spend some quality time on thoughts, advice, and wrapping up. But also incorporate, if we can, a couple of key questions that have come into the chat. And I feel like when we wrap up, we'll be able to address some of this very naturally. So one of the questions is it very challenging for women to start the career in sales and marketing? What are the problems faced? Can we be focused to complete our targets stress-free? And what are the key attributes that women need to build to be able to excel in sales? So I know you spoke about skills, networking, making those trade-offs, game-changing moments. How would you want people to leave this conversation today with one or two pieces of lessons learned, advice to inspire the people watching and listening to us today on how can they be successful in their sales career? Dipali.
Let me go ahead, Dipali.
So I think very quickly, whether you are in sales or you're in marketing and you toggle between sales and marketing, what matters is the commitment to stay there. In a 30-year career like I've had, it's not like I've not had failures, but how you learn from them, get up and move on. I think resilience is the key thing. I think the only additional difference that people keep on asking me, is the fact, and the questions come up here also, the stress and sales targets. Well, there are targets in marketing also. And today marketing is becoming so integrated. If you leave FMCG out, but the pipeline delivery that you have to do in the B2B, side or in the service industry, the performance marketing bit that is coming in is equally stressful if you're talking about sales targets, being stressful. And of course, I'm also finding that some people just find coming to work being stressful these days. That's also a conversation on social media. So, you have to put yourself out, and if you have to deliver something, even if you have to deliver a large, dinner party at home for 50 people coming, there is some degree of stress and hard work, that is involved. And I think what my one strong tip to everyone is, don't look at every quarter, every month as far as evaluating yourself is concerned. Don't be harsh on yourself. Evaluate yourself every 3 to 5 years, and see what you've achieved in the 3 to 5 years. I think, be empathetic towards yourself when it comes to evaluating yourself, and therefore you will not take the stress.
I think the only other thing that I'd probably add is that and I'm just reflecting on my own career journey so far. I've the resilience and staying on in this field has come from the fact that I really enjoy doing what I do. And I think that's probably the one tip that I'd give to anybody listening, which is that make sure that you're in a line of work that gives you joy. I mean, for me, as much as I can complain about the stresses of the targets, the reality also is that it gives me such an adrenaline boost every time I see myself hitting, exceeding, delivering the numbers that are there. I've done a few stints where I didn't have line business delivery, and I hated it. I was bored out of my mind, and I realized that I love what I do. So you make sure that, you've given yourself, the career which gives you joy. And then don't focus on just the aspects of the stress. Remember, that's also the numbers give you stress, but the numbers are also what actually give you joy in the field of work that you're in.
Totally agree with you, Priya.
Kanchana.
I just want to give you 3 points. I think I always believe knowledge is power. Always do 125%. Don't give 100%, especially early on in your career. Give it all, 125%. That's the only time you can do. And point number 2, it's okay to not know everything. You will not know everything when you start your career, or even now when you are at any level, you will not know everything. And I think the passion for learning, continuous learning will have to be there. And failure is the biggest teacher, and you will become more and more resilient, is what failure teaches you. And third, it's a very mundane thing. I tell my daughter's 17. So I tell her to excel in mathematics, the only way that you can do is practice, practice, practice. So whatever we are doing, if you're especially in sales, do not get bogged down by quarterly targets, monthly targets. Go after your client every day. It is actually very mundane, but that's the only way you can excel. So I think consistently, it's not about 1 quarter, 2 quarter. I think consistently, if you're patient, perseverant, and you can definitely do it. If you have all these 3 qualities, hands down, I think you can get into sales.
Amazing. We have time for some questions, and I've received a few privately in the chat. I do want to make a comment by summarizing everything that you said, especially around stress and being focused. But how can you do it if there is stress? I would summarize everything that I heard you all say by saying, nothing worth having comes easily. If it's come easily to you, it's not worth having. I think that's the summary of what I heard all of you speak. The first question that has come in the chat is, just a minute, I need to scroll up. What responsibility do women leaders in sales have to promote women talent to have equal representation? Before this is very exciting, right? Because I think there's a special place in hell for every woman who doesn't help and support other women. There's a special place in hell. So what responsibility do women leaders in sales have to promote women talent to have equal representation? Would love to hear from you. Priya,
Sumita, can I go first? Because I just want to give sorry, Priya. Sorry
No,
again. So I just recruited 40 people in my team, 9 months back. We were enhancing our sales team. We went from a 40-member team to 75-member team, right? So we recruited about 35 to 40 people. In IBM, at least, we have a mandate to maintain a certain, diversity percentage. So I think it's about the will of the leader, and it is about the policy at the organization that both counts. It's a different matter, and I get a place in heaven, and I wanted to react to that because let's say an X number was given to me of diversity percentage. I'm far above that number, as far as my team's diversity percentage is concerned. But I think as a leader, it's not just about recruitment; it's also about making a place, according to me, gender agnostic. So because you don't want a situation where male are not allies, they also need to feel that it's an equal workplace. And I think at IBM, we are managing to do that.
I think couple of things that come to my mind. Of course, Dipali, much like you, I also keep a hawk's eye on the recruitment numbers, and I've had for a while. To make sure, and then you make sure that you do this obviously with very clear merit standards, because I completely agree with you. You don't want to get to a point where it becomes a quota system, because I think women get hurt more by that than anything else, honestly. For me, there are 2 things that as women leaders we must do. The first one is about making sure that you provide that perspective in a leadership team of how do you, balancing out some of the biases that tend to come. So assertive women being called arrogant, and the standards that are there, which are sometimes different for men versus women. So how do you, or biases like, oh, she has a young child, and will she really be able to take this crucible job, right? So I've self-appointed myself in a lot of these discussions to provide that perspective that, you don't treat people with two different standards. It has to be the same. And the second one is to be very proactively reaching out to women. And you can do that and I try and do that for about as many women as I possibly can. Folks who have worked with me, folks who have not worked with me. And I do that. And I know that my toughest moments honestly were when, my two children were born, coming back and, taking care of both things at home and at work. So I do that very, very proactively. Anytime anybody in my extended organization went on maternity leave, I made sure that I reached out to them and said that, what, when you come back, I'll ping you again and then let's connect. And I continue to do that with, whoever is willing to. Some last a bit longer than others, but I always tell folks that I'm available. And then for some few of them, when they're going through these specific life stage changes, that's something as women leaders, reaching out to women to give and share your personal experience. It's not giving gyan. It's basically just sharing your personal experience so that they understand that what they're going through is not unique. And that they have someone that they can reach out to if in those moments of doubt.
Absolutely. Those are very good tips.
Go for it, Kanchana.
So I think for me, DEI should not be an initiative. It must be a business imperative. I think it's very important. It's not a tick in the checkbox. That's extremely important. We don't get together on March 8. We don't want to do all those initiatives for that 1 week. So I think we should do a conscious hiring, especially in an industry like real estate. It's not that we don't get women, we get them. When they start their careers, initial, junior or mid-level, we get them. I think the pipeline I would say there's no pipeline, to quote Indira Nooyi. I think there is no pipeline, especially when they come to the middle management. Middle management and biological clock are synonymous. So as Priya said, I think that's exactly where you have to, help them get to the platform where they were, give them their due promotions, and they don't take a setback because they took a 6 months off. I think these areas are some areas where women are perhaps losing their opportunity. I mean, starting early is very important, especially in sales, Sumita. I think owning a P&L responsibility early on becomes very, very important. And if they get a break in between, that's where the gap comes in, and they're not able to catch up given how the corporate setup is. So these areas, I know we still have a very long way to go, but if we can, today organizations are very conscious, and if you want to build your business, if you want to build your numbers, if you want to build your bottom line, I think you will have to build your organizational setup as well. I think that's where all of us will have to come as a fraternity and help each other. With you always.
Absolutely. And as you all were speaking, and this is with no offense to the male allies, I'm not getting into any kind of discrimination, but one of the thoughts that came to me is in LinkedIn, especially at very senior levels, when we sit down and do twice a year succession planning, every leader of mine has to mandatorily share names of women as well as men. And if they only have men on their succession plan, I don't sit back quietly. I have very serious discussions with why. Why don't you have someone? And if you don't have someone internally, then why aren't you pipelining externally? And don't just tell me you had a coffee with somebody. I want a name. I want to know who have you met and had coffee with. And how are you nurturing that person when the opportunity arises later? So I know I have my colleague here, Ruchi, who's a sales leader in LinkedIn in India. She will validate that what I'm saying is true. Every time I do her own succession planning, I'm challenging her to make sure that there are women successors that she is, referencing. All right. I think we just have a couple more minutes left. I have one more question, which is about facing failure. And I know some of you spoke about it, that it's not easy to have a career in sales. But the question very specifically is, how have you faced peer pressure and fear of failure at the start of your career? And how did you overcome this? So opening it up for any of you to answer that and then bring us home.
let me go here. I had a tumultuous start to my career. I think the first year joining in, I probably had the worst start that anyone can imagine. I was young, probably didn't know enough about what it means to have a career at all. And as with most failures, the thing is that it's the shock of it is the first thing that you need to overcome more than anything else. For me, I think I was lucky that it happened so early in my life. That it just hit me, and then when you're younger, you're a little bit more how do I say it, less. You don't know enough about the world to for it to compound in your head and become something much bigger than it. I think the only thing that I did do was went and spoke with my manager and then a few colleagues whose opinions I valued, and asked them that I understand where I am, tell me what should I do differently. And then that, because it happened so early in my life, I almost made it a part of how I worked from there onwards. So after that, every single role assignment, my first conversation with my manager always used to be that give me a very clear set of benchmark of what success looks like. And then here's the frequency at which I will come and ask you how I'm doing. And I want you to be as blunt as you possibly can. So don't sugarcoat, don't give me that sandwich response, which is you're doing well, but tell me exactly what all I'm not doing well, and have faith that I can handle it. So my version of the workaround now that I have is just this: be very upfront in asking first for what success means, so that you're clear and there's no ambiguity there to begin with. And second, do not be afraid to ask for feedback at a very regular frequency. Do those check-ins, and it doesn't change, how many ever years you've spent in an organization or the levels that you are at. So yeah, those two things.
Amazing. Asking for feedback, growth mindset, and then acting upon it. I love it. Anyone else who wants to take a shot at that, and then we'll wrap it up?
Just an anecdote to amplify what Priya has said. If you're very good at your job, you get opportunity to lead very quickly. So I was managing, 3 people within about 5 years of working. And as a first-time manager, with no training sometimes, I think I was a failure in the first time, it didn't go well. But that prompted me, and the feedback that happened at that point of time and the circumstances that happened, that I'm a I became over a period of time very conscious leader. I recognized that I needed to build this muscle, this bone of being a great leader. And I think that has helped me very, very good, because I know that that's an area that I want to be good at. And, today I'm known for that aspect, that, one of the best leaders to have, because you had an early failure. So it's like, if your child is in first grade and is not good at maths, and you focus on it, and the child becomes a genius at maths, by the time, the child's in grade 10. So I think sometimes early failures are good for you to actually get to learn certain things, which are remarkable skills later on for your career.
So, Bita, if it is of any solace, I had a lot of failures than success, I would say. Every step, at every level, I would say, failure is a part of your life. You become much more tougher and stronger when you're back. So I only tell my team, we have big teams, we only tell my team, be like a phoenix. You want to brood, yes, brood over it, but don't take a break. But come back. When you come back strongly. And I think I resonate with Priya when she said, ask for feedback, ask for help. Do not shy away, ask for help. There are people, we think there are no people to help us. No, please ask for help. That's the only way you can overcome failures. And it's not going to be only early on in your career. Until you're through your career, this is going to set in, and career or any journey is not going to be smooth throughout. So failure is going to be a part of your life. Embrace it, accept that there is going to be failure at some point in time, yearly, every 2 years, whatever that time frame is, and look at it objectively. Stay confident, look at it objective, correct your mistakes, and go back stronger. You will fail again, it's okay. Stay up, look at it objectively, go after what you want. I mean, that's how I have done it. So this is a small takeaway for everyone from my learning.
Appreciate it. There's so much food for thought in my own mind right now after listening to the 3 of you. I can't thank you enough. It's been really enriching. Thank you, each of you, for your honesty, vulnerability, and authenticity. I love the energy that we all had, and I want to thank People Connect. Anjali's back on. Anjali, are we good to wrap up right now? All right. Okay. Lovely meeting all of you.
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.